In other news, the probe into the Air India crash is escalating. FAA and Boeing have rejected claims made by India's Air India crash probe. In the initial probe report, the AIB references a 2018 FAA report advising inspection of fuel switch locks. However, this 2018 FAA advisory was not mandatory and was therefore not followed by Air India. Maintenance records show the throttle control module on Air India Flight 171 was replaced in 2019 and 2023. Following the report on the 11th of July, the FAA ruled out the need for an airworthiness directive and declared that the fuel control switch design is safe. Boeing soon backed this, stating no immediate action is needed on the aircraft. Meanwhile, Pilot Association has raised questions. They claim the report shows a clear bias towards blaming the pilot and putting this on pilot error. The association rejects the claim that the pilot cut the fuel switches and says the investigation is being driven by a presumption of pilot killed, and demanding full transparency and have questioned the secrecy surrounding the probe.
The fuel control valves of the engine of the spar fuel control valve, that means the valve which controls the fuel from your fuel tank to that particular engine. There are all different micro switches that are there which make contact when you move the fuel control switch from cutoff to on. Maybe these would have to be investigated in greater detail. I'm sure that the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau has all the necessary expertise. As far as I'm concerned, I think it is extremely remote that anyone during a process of takeoff takes his attention off the takeoff, looks down, finds the switch, puts it off, and then finds the other switch, again puts it off, and all within a period of 1 second. In my opinion, extremely unlikely.
Right, getting in those details essentially has got to do with the fact that this has now been rather rubbished or not acknowledged by Boeing, talking about the fact that this isn't something that is going to be accepted. Given that, Amit, our findings essentially show that there was zero error on the part of the two pilots there, isn't it?
Sneha, what we can say at this point in time that the AIB initial report of the primary report is something we have to rely on. Yes, continuously there will be interpretations as it fits the case to different parties in this particular aircraft tragedy, and more narrative will be pushed forward, be it in the country or outside, in the global community, which is happening in this case. The FAA airworthiness directive, which has been released privately, is being now said to have claiming that there was no problem with the fuel cutoff switches of Boeing 787 or the other models that we are speaking of, and Boeing also having to be endorsing such narrative. Again, this is not something on the record. But even if you go by the 2018 directive, airworthiness directive, or bulletin of the FAA, the American watchdog, it was an advisory, not mandatory issue, and rather for the aircraft operators to be, cautious about. And right now, what we certainly need to underline again and again is that any insinuation that pilots were at mistake would be extremely wrong to say at this point in time, because we know for a fact that barely 13 seconds before that Mayday call, all attempts to revive the entire engine system of Boeing Dreamliner 787 AI 171 was being done by Captain Sabdawal and pilot Clive Kunder. So this is on record. That fact is on record because first engine one switches were put from cutoff to run. Engine one deceleration was arrested and engine was recovering. It was engine two which was taking time for deceleration to stop, and you cannot believe that within span of 13 seconds the craft will come under control. Despite that, both of these pilots made their best of efforts to ensure that people on board, their life is saved like any other professional pilot would do. So at this point in time, any insinuation that pilots were at mistake would be extremely dangerous. Also, for the fact that investigation is still going on, and Indian investigative agency AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Bureau, that work, and they are also seeking assistance from the
Okay.
domain experts from the global community. So we have to wait and watch in this particular context. Back to you, Sneha.
All right, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. Ahmedabad getting in those details and telling us about the response of FAA and Boeing as far as India's own investigations are concerned, indicating that the pilots, our pilots, were not at fault.